everyone, it's Daz, and welcome to a new year. It's 2026, which is hard to believe. I hope that you've had a wonderful week and that you have a good weekend. And I want to touch on something that's been on my heart lately, and it's trauma. We've talked about trauma a lot on this channel, and one nice thing about making videos for over a decade is that I've had a decade to change just like anyone else. And I was reflecting with this next calendar year how not too long ago, I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago, I dealt with a lot of trauma. And I can recall that one of the forms of trauma that I really had was over a heartbreak that I had. And I remember I got so sick and tired of feeling sorry for myself and crying every day. If you've ever been there where you've been traumatized by something that's happened to you, it doesn't have to be a breakup. It could be anything. It could be more severe than what I went through. It could be less severe. Trauma is trauma regardless. And I can recall I would always wake up and I'd always have a heaviness on me no matter how much time passed. And whenever I would replay the events in my head, I would break down into tears. Now, if I was in a public place, I trained myself to keep a straight face, but it was like a disease, an infection inside of me that continuously haunted me every time I would break into tears. And I can recall asking God finally, I don't feel like this is even about what I think it's about. It's much deeper. I'm tired of always feeling weak. I'm tired of feeling sad all the time. I'm tired of feeling helpless and hopeless. I pray all the time for deliverance. I pray for clarity. I pray to get over this person, to get over this situation. Why am I still struggling, 6+ 1 year, 1.5 years, 2 years out? And why does replaying the events make me feel like I'm reliving it all over again? And when I asked God to show me the source of the pain, I can recall falling asleep for a brief second, and I had a dream that there was this figure staring at me. It was pale white. It had big, large black eyes. It reminded me a lot of what they described on The Fourth Kind. It looked like a giant white owl, but with pitch black eyes, and it was smiling evilly at me, almost like it was relishing and enjoying the pain I was in. And I realized the deeper I hurt, the more I fed this thing. And so it was eye-opening to see that. And obviously I rebuked it, but it didn't mean that instantly I was able to just snap out of it. Eventually I did snap out of it, and now I can think about the situation and I don't really feel much of anything other than just, I'm glad that I got out of that point in my life. And there's a lot of traumas that I've had. When you get trauma to your body, it's basically something that creates havoc. But when it happens to you emotionally, mentally, it can create a spiritual gateway. And movies like Smile explore this idea of trauma being this gateway into this entity that smiles at the person who's haunted by it. And the thing about the smile entity is the way it smiles evilly at the person before it tries to devour them is the same way that owl smiled at me, which is one reason I thought the movies were really creepy. However, what I realized is that trauma is like a disease, and if somebody doesn't figure out how to get rid of it, they will become most likely defeated by it, whether it's wanting to harm themselves, harm others, or even a form of a mental illness. And I think about that because I'm thankful that God allowed me to go through that period and pull me out of it. But really what made me come out of it was, number one, I had to acknowledge that as much as I was a victim of bad circumstances, I still was a willing participant. Number two, that replaying it over and over was never going to fix it. Number three, the only way to take your power back is to cast trauma out and to realize that you have the ability to rewrite your story. Your story isn't necessarily tied to that traumatic event, in that it's going to prevent you from going forward. Even if you've had the worst life, you can still overcome that trauma. And, I can look back at it now and I feel whole in those areas where I once felt empty. And I just thank God so much for delivering me from depression, from anxiety, from harmful thoughts that I had. And I know it's not easy. And I know a lot of people I heard say that last year was a hard year for them. For me, last year was difficult, but not because of trauma, more because of just there's so much change happening, and I dealt with a lot of people around me who operated in trauma, but thankfully, because God had taken me through that season, I was not impacted by it. But it could have been traumatic had I allowed it to be. But I realized that one thing that makes something traumatic is it has to mean a lot to you, whatever that bad thing happens. And then if it has meaning and it sticks to you, then it will try to replay over and over again. I kind of talked about this in my video about walking away in my moving situation and how I lived in some conditions that were less than ideal. And it could have been traumatic to the point where I'm far removed from the situation today, but I'm still sitting there thinking about it. There are times I remember it, and I definitely don't miss those circumstances, but I have so much gratitude about being removed from the situation that I just look at it as a chapter of my life that was less favorable, but not defining. And I feel like God has blessed me so much with a lot of insight because, like last year, I did a lot of unique things I didn't plan to do, such as climb mountains, and rock climbing really has taught me like pushing through pain, pushing through discomfort, not letting discomfort or pain define your life, not letting it be your end of your story, realizing that pain is just a passing phase. But that's easier said than done. But I used to be a perfectionist and someone who wanted everything to be right. And if I messed something up, I was like the end of the world for me. It felt like life or death. But even that way of thinking is toxic. And it's one way the enemy really gets someone to put themselves in a bind. And so I just wanted to come on and talk about that because the Bible talks about how perfect love casteth out all fear. It also talks about how God has not given us the spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. And the reason I say that is because when you are dealing with trauma, it is almost impossible when it's weighing on you that heavy to have a sound mind. And it says he gives you power, love. What does trauma do? It disempowers you. It weakens you. And I can say this as someone who's been weak mentally, who's been weak spiritually, who's been weak physically, and been brought through so much and changed by God. And I thank him so much each and every day. But I just want to pray for anyone who might be going through a form of trauma, that God would just meet you where you're at, that he would show you that you do have the power to reverse and to change whatever you're going through. And you also don't have to live in fear. You don't have to live in anxiety or depression, and that you don't have to let this rule your life anymore. I just wanted to reflect on this as a word of encouragement and also a spiritual warfare, because we live in a day and age where I feel like people want to be felt sorry for and feel sorry for themselves all the time. And it's not wrong to talk about your feelings, to acknowledge what happened, but when you sulk in it, that's when you become trapped. And a lot of people think that there's so much stuff standing between them and what they want or where they want to go. But a lot of it is trauma. This is why we have people that are well into their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, to the deathbed, still talking about stuff that happened to them as a child. Not everybody was given a good childhood. Not everybody was given good young years or current situations or circumstances. But we all have some forms of trauma that we've been through, and we can't let that stop us from where we want to go and who we are going to be. So I hope that you enjoyed this word of encouragement and that you have a wonderful rest of your week and weekend. Take care. God bless. Until next time.